Hello and good morning. So, this is the second lecture in this series, which is also a CME. And what we are looking here is to understand what the five element theory says. How is it possible to make a coherence in the modern day context? How is it possible to align it such that in the modern version of science that we study, it can be understood? It also delves into areas that are normally not considered when we study these, because these are elaborately studied mostly in Ayurveda or in theology. Theology is not what we are going to ever touch here, but Ayurveda is essentially something that we will be progressing into once we have done the three element theory. So, at this point, the five element theory. So, at this point, the first thing is when we talk about the five elements, we have to establish their identities. We also have to understand that the five element theory says that principally there is one element, and from it all other elements have evolved. So the construct is such that you have five elements or five fundamental elements coming from one basic element, so it becomes a 1 plus 4 theory. And why it is five elements is because all these five are disjoint in their characteristics vis-a-vis each other, except that there is an origin and end into one. The most modern concept that helps you understand the five element theory comes from the quantum sciences. Why it is quantum sciences is because it is not limited to physics alone. Physics is one thing which definitely elaborates the entire science or establishes the physicality of the science, but what it thrives upon is the mathematics, which actually expands and narrates the reasons, the formulations through a set of its own language as to how something has come into being. Therefore, it will be integral to understand mathematics here. It will be integral to understand physics here. And there is no chemistry and no biology at this stage. Going into the five elements theory, that is why the first thing we need to touch upon is the element that can perhaps give rise to every other thing. This means that beyond the known or beyond the described as we know, we are going to postulate things when we have a relook at each of these elements. So, while postulating, and dare I say that redefining what is supposedly and believed to be elementarily already done by sages thousands of years ago, it is an attempt at contemporary redefinition and hence a contemporary postulation of what exists. Akash is supposed to be the element which provides for the space in which everything can happen. Now, everything that can happen in Akash means it is concurrently somewhat similar to what quantum sciences say, that there has to be a primordial space, and the word space is important here because Akash is inferred as space in translations. So, the primordial space in which all matter and energy exist and dissipate. They coexist and they dissipate. Fundamentally, even quantum sciences at that point do not exactly say whether it is matter or is it energy. But they do say that there is the principle of conservation of energy and matter together that applies, which they now, or which they speak of in terms of general theory of relativity of Einstein and other theories of relativity governed by Lagrangian equations derived from mathematics. Most interesting element of Akash is that at that point where it is infinitesimal, you just do not know what even the size of the thing is. If it was a particle or if it was a wave, how does it behave? The possibility is both that it is a particle and a wave at the same time. It has to be something neutral, so there is nothing positive, nothing negative about it in terms of charges. Then it is the highest entropy state or highest state of disorder, and it is the lowest state of entropy and the highest state of enthalpy. That because, and I'll clarify here, because as matter condenses or as matter is formed, it is said it has a high entropy state, and that is why it disintegrates or loses its structure. So when we say universe is expanding, we never say space is expanding. Universe is considered as matter, whereas space is space, and we are talking about Akash. So Akash, being space, is the lowest entropy state and the highest enthalpy state. That defines the thermodynamic status of Akash or the equilibrium. For mathematical purposes, you may consider that this is a state of 100 enthalpy and 0 entropy. However, this may not be correct. Dimensionally speaking, quantum sciences today say that there are many dimensions of a thing to look at or its existence than we know. It's not just the coordinate geometry of x, y and z axis. So, since we do not know the number of dimensions, it is left to an assumption to be, say, n. Also, since there are n dimensions, the possibility of laws of motion that govern mass of waves, either patterns in which matter or energy exists, is not to be governed by one single law of dynamics. It would have Newtonian dynamics to it, it would have Hamiltonian dynamics to it, and it is most likely also to have a Lagrangian dynamics to it. And the Lagrangian dynamics perhaps will offer the best explanation for such an existence. When we talk about n dimensions, we are referring to many folds, and those many folds are to be found in the definitions of Hausdorff and Euclidean space. These constructs lend Akash a definition which I would want to iterate, that Akash is the fundamental, pre space time, pre energetic, and pre material universal substrate. It is a dynamic, oscillatory entity embodying the potential for all existence. Now, I break here pre space time because we do not know much about it, how to define. Time loses its existence when it approaches the speed of light, so time doesn't exist. Space is a collective of matter and energy, and here we do not define it as either matter or energy, so it is pre space time. And pre material because if there is no matter, no time, no energy, nothing defined, it cannot have a material existence either. It is dynamic, oscillatory entity because we believe or we construct or postulate that Akash is oscillating between a particle state and an energy state, and it is in a dynamic equilibrium neutral state. Now, this embodies the potential for existence because it is from here we say that all origins are happening. Akash is characterized by inherent fluidity between a distributed energy state and localized proto-matter states existing within a primordial n-dimensional Hausdorff and Euclidean manifold. Now, this means that while it is oscillating between matter and energy or particle and energy thresholds, Akash definitely is fluid, and the nature of energy concentrations, to say, between the states are different. Those different energy concentrations are lending it a possibility that it can transform it into a state of higher mass, lower dimension, and more entropy and lesser enthalpy. These dynamics are further governed by a fundamental principle that can be described using Lagrangian equations, Newtonian dynamics, and Hamiltonian formalism. These will allow you to understand how it is possible for something to exist in multiple dimensions beyond x, y, and z. This also reflects that an interplay is possible, and between field-like and particle-like aspects at its core, Akash exists as a definitive identity. This is the first postulate that is to be understood in the five element theory. Just to put into perspective now Akash, how it exists, and to summarize, it has points that it has n number of dimensions which can be understood and achieved using Hausdorff and Euclidean space dynamics. It has a potential to move in multiple directions, which is why it is important to understand that Newtonian, Hamiltonian, and Lagrangian dynamics impact and exist. It is also fundamental that it is neither a particle nor a wave but a coexisting dimensional entity which continuously transforms itself from one to the other state, and hence it is fluid, and it is the one primordial space from where everything arises, everything originates, and it is how we will be able to identify the nature of Akash and establish the important element that it is neutral, and it is what provides enough dynamics for new elements to emerge. In the next lecture, I will talk more about Vayu, the next element, its origin from Akash, and what changes when we move from Akash to Vayu. To have a complete understanding of this, you can enroll for the CME, and you will be shared with the study material associated with this, alongside a certification that will follow through an exam. This is a paid module, and hence you'll have to enroll for that purpose. For enrollments, you can leave your comments, as also wherever this video is shared, leave your comments as you want to enroll, and let hashtag enroll be the statement based on which we will get back to you and we will enroll you. At the same time, take you through a journey of Panch Mahabhut, then will further proceed to further levels, expanding the understanding of Panch Mahabhut and how you can understand Ayurveda in the modern scientific terms. It's a long continuing medical education program. These videos will follow as I get time. So there is no definitive term as to when this will end. But yes, the video being out means we are starting to enroll you for every next step. Thank you.